For those of you who don't know me, my name is Pomfret. You might also know me under the name of Archaic. I'm the webmaster of bulbagarden.net and the Bulbapedia, and I'm one of the finalists for the gamer category in iiNet's Top Geek 2.0 competition. Now, we were given an interesting little challenge in my category. We were told to use our geeky knowledge to come up with the game we always wanted someone to have invented. Now, that's a little bit of a problem for me because, to be perfectly honest, I've been gaming since, well, before I was even in preschool. I have so many game ideas, I didn't even know where to start, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the objective was to create an original title with the potential to have, well, to be the next must-have release. Now, okay, how do we go about creating something original? Well, the first thing I tried was this, but to be honest, it didn't really help me come up with anything original, just gave me a bit of a headache. So instead I went for another tried and true route. Try to find a nice combination of genres that hasn't really been tried before. Something that's fresh and unique. And have I achieved that? Well, I'd like to think so. So my game proposal for Top Geek 2.0 is Game Store Saga. It's a business sim management game incorporating elements from many other diverse genres, including RPG games, tower defense games, even dating simulations and life simulations. So why would I pick something like a sim game? Well, to be quite honest, I don't think any other game genre really has the same kind of broad-based appeal. Maybe your physics problem games like Angry Birds and Portal, but honestly I think the Sims franchise has still really outsold them all. And I mean, what gamer doesn't remember playing the SimCity franchise with fond memories? I mean, there's appeal not just to the core gamers and the dedicated gamers who will spend hours and hours playing these things, but there's also appeal to the non-core casual gamers who will appreciate a game that they can pick up, play for 15 minutes, then put down and come back to another day. And I mean, I guess my main reason, to be perfectly honest, just because I like sim games. We're told to pick a game we wanted everyone to create. Well, this is something I wish had been created a long time ago. So the games which really inspired me with coming up with this idea included Harvest Moon, in particular the title Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life for the GameCube. Reseteer, which many of you might not be familiar with, but it's a charming little RPG where you are the owner of an item store in your typical JRPG setting by a Japanese indie group. You can actually find it on Steam if you're interested. And also titles which, again, some of you might not be familiar with, by a Japanese development studio called Kairosoft, who mainly work for iOS and Android currently. Their most recent title, Cafeteria Nipponica, has you running a small chain of restaurants, and a much older title, only available in Japanese and only on iOS, well, the only way you can get it at the moment anyway, is a title called Wai Gemu Hanbai Ten, which basically means clamorously game store. Yes, so there is a game where you actually run a game store, not available in English, and for anyone who's actually familiar with Kairosoft titles, this is considered to be their worst effort ever. So I'd really like to see this idea done justice, and I think with the different route I've taken to Kairosoft there, I can maybe do that justice. So the premise of Game Store Saga is you take on the role of a young owner of a new independent video game store in October 1977. Now, who can remember what happened in October 1977? Anyone? Probably not many of you. Maybe some of you are too young. For the rest of us though, October 1977 is when the Atari VCS came out, later to be known as the Atari 2600. So what you will be doing as the owner of this young game store is growing your business over 35 years of gaming history, starting from then, in the second generation of consoles. Yes, there was stuff before then, I know, shocking, isn't it? And going all the way up to the modern day. Now, the objective of the game is really open-ended. I really want gamers to take this idea and run with it. So you don't need to become a nationwide chain if you don't want to, or a multinational chain. You can, the options are there, that's a valid path for you to take. But maybe you could just become the next Super Potato. I hope people watching this actually know what Super Potato is. But anyway, maybe you could be the next gamers mecca, the site that gamers will take pilgrimages to. So, what would you do in the game? How's the gameplay work? Well, obviously it's a business sim. The first thing you're doing is you're managing your store. You're hiring, firing, training, promoting, and even demoting staff, which is a bit further than most other management sims I've found. In particular, I think what sets this apart is that I'm intending the staff to be essentially real, well, real for a sense of being AI, but real people. They have their own goals, they've got their own ambitions. This means that unlike many other management sims where you hire this guy and he stays your staff for the rest of the game, these guys might actually leave. Maybe they think they can earn more money elsewhere. Maybe they graduated high school and so they want to go off to university and not be working part-time anymore. Though you're going to need to make sure you've got enough casuals for the Christmas rush. Maybe that's a good place to find some new staff to replace them. What else do you get? Well, of course you've got to purchase your inventories. Make sure that you're getting the games that you can actually sell to people. I mean, it's the basic of any kind of store simulation, even going all the way back to burger time. So, you need to follow the customer trends and fads, figure out what they want. I'll get more to that in a moment. Figure out what you're going to stock. You also need to manage the store numbers, sizes, layouts, locations. So, you'll originally start at the beginning of the game, you might have a fairly small store. I mean, much smaller probably than your standard indie games here in Australia at the moment. But from there, you can grow. Maybe that one store gets bigger itself, maybe ends up multiple stories, I don't know. Or maybe you end up establishing that chain. As I've said, it's up to you. So how are we going to sell all this stuff that you've bought? Well, that's where we get to the real core of the gameplay, this tower defense style gameplay. So, in your normal tower defense game, your enemies come in waves. Well, in this kind of game, your customers essentially come in waves. So, in a standard game, each wave would essentially be meant to represent 1 month of real time, essentially. And these would be your customers coming through. You would have your towers, your shelving and display units, attacking the customers, enticing them to purchase things. So your ammunition is the games itself, and the promotional materials as well, I suppose, things like your catalogues and flyers and so forth that they might take so they can read more about the game and get excited about them. And at the end of each wave, you would receive your report on the monthly sales, and you would actually also get additional material to help you follow the trends. So I was thinking, say, a mocked up 4-page magazine. So in terms of magazines, I'm really talking about like those magazines from the Game Center CX, DS title, if any of you are aware of that. Very, very simple things, basically just to give you some simple hints on what's going to happen. But hey, if you know your gaming history, then you won't even need that, because you'll know what's coming. And you'll know when the gaming crash is going to happen as well. Now, it's going to be important for you to get to know your customers with this game. Because as I said, it's not just tower defense, it's not just business sim, it's also elements of dating sim and life sim. The regular customers, or the customers who become regulars of your store in the 70s and 80s, grow up. That 10-year-old annoying kid who stays in the store the whole time, are you going to chase him out even though, because he's not buying anything? or are you going to let him stay and browse around? Well, there's going to be ramifications for that sort of thing. Maybe if he stays, he annoys a bunch of customers, but later on in life, maybe he comes back and becomes this really great productive member of staff. On the other hand, you kick him out, and maybe 20 years later he comes back, he's a venture capitalist, and he's running your competitor. Now, the examples won't always be that extreme, but I do want to give players the experience of actually getting to know these people rather than just treating their customers as numbers. Call me a bit sentimental maybe, but I mean, I actually teach marketing and I actually think that it is important to build a relationship with customers. Call me old-fashioned. But if you're not interested in those relationships, that's completely up to you. Will it penalise you? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on the customers. But if you grow bigger, you might find that you're leaving some of those regulars behind. If you're suddenly running a multinational franchise, you're not likely to be getting to know all those regulars on an intimate basis. On the other hand, if you're running a single store, maybe that becomes the focus of your game, as opposed to someone whose focus is more on all the sales statistics and that's all they care about. So there are multiple ways you can actually play this game. But what I'd really like to see is for players, in the sense of their avatar, actually growing as a person. There is obviously an element of leveling up as a manager, so you would have your character gain various business skills and improve in their ability to do certain things over time, and you might even find yourself constrained in that if you don't have someone, if you can't perform this task yourself, you might actually need someone to perform that for you. You might need to hire staff to do that. But I also want the player to be leveling up as a person, so the choices you make in your interactions with them, same as you might say in a BioWare game, they impact on those around you, and how they respond to you can impact on you as well. So, as I said earlier, you basically follow 35 years of gaming, and in the game you will actually experience real historical events. Obviously they'll be a bit abstracted, and obviously we're not really going to be able to use real names, so it's not going to be the Nintendo Virtual Boy, it would be the Nintendo's Cyber Child or something, I don't know. The parodies would be obvious enough that people would get them and would see the parallels, we would hope, but the impacts on the industry would all be real. So in a sense, I guess there's also an element of the educational game genre in this. Now, I personally can't remember a fun educational game since, I guess Europa Universalis 2 was fairly good, but I don't think many people watching this would remember that. So for the rest of you, maybe, I don't know, Carmen Sandiego? Been a while since we've had a fun educational title, hasn't it? So, as I've been saying, you can choose your path, but you can also choose your level of immersion in the title. If you want, you could play it very similar to the existing Kairosoft management titles in that you are very hands-off and a lot of things are abstracted. This makes the game very casual friendly. But you would get a much richer, much deeper experience by peeling back some of those layers of abstraction. You don't have to micromanage everything, but there would be options so you experience certain aspects or have certain aspects made more prominent. So, for instance, if you don't like the tower defense gameplay, if you find that a problem, I mean, while it's really the core of how the game kind of works, you would be able to abstract that a bit. And certainly, when you get up to the higher levels of management, normally that would be abstracted quite a lot, because you don't expect a CEO to go around telling all of his stores exactly how each of those should be laid out. But all that abstraction would be optional. Now when the game's over, well, the game's really just begun. Your first run through, up to the completion of the 35 years, is that historical mode. After that though, you can play again, and with a randomly generated history. This is going to be one where you will not know what's going to happen, and you will have to watch what's happening in that gaming industry, because you could see something completely wacko happen. I mean, in the real world, we already saw the fall of Sega after the Dreamcast, but why did it have to happen there, and why Sega? Could we have seen Nintendo fall? Could Atari have stayed around longer? Could we have seen the Amiga computer become the main computer gaming platform and the Mac and PC never really catching up to it? Different things could happen, and it might get a little hairy, but it will be interesting. But wait, there's more! When you finish that one, then you have the options to give yourself a bit more of a challenge. So this is really the kind of gameplay that would be there for the dedicated gamers. I wouldn't expect the casuals to be playing it too much, but they might, and I hope they'd enjoy it. So you would be able to give yourself special advantages or handicaps based on things you've unlocked in the game. So achieving set goals the game gives you would give you more unlocks, would let you unlock more customizations. Customizations in the sense of customizing parts of the gameplay and also parts of the experience. So for instance, say you feel that a 1 month period for the waves is just too long. You want to get right there in the real nitty-gritty. Well, maybe you'll bring that down to 1 wave represents 2 weeks. And so, of course, in the background, a lot of the abstractions would change subtly in the sense that, okay, well, we can't give you the same magazine every 2 weeks. They're monthly magazines. Maybe we'll have 2 different magazines. So when you go to the 2 weeks one, that's what you'll see. Obviously, you won't have as many customers going through, or the abstraction won't be of as many, so your end profits might be fairly similar, but you would be able to micromanage that more tightly. On the other hand, you might say, I really don't have very much time at all, I just like a very speed game. Maybe you elongate those periods so they now represent a month. You can now finish a game in an hour. Be a bit boring, personally, to do that, but hey, maybe some casuals actually might appreciate that kind of thing. They would be really speeding through the game. Obviously, you're not going to unlock much stuff if you're working in that kind of mode, but the option would be there for people who just want something. And of course, as you usually see in a lot of New Game Pluses, in the New Game Plus Plus, you would be able to carry over aspects of your character's progression and that of your stuff. Not everything, because, well, for instance, you don't want to carry the age characteristic over, but also you don't want to carry over all their skill levels, otherwise after a while you've got nothing to do in-game. But many of the things they have learned would somehow translate over. If not everything they've learned, at least as a bonus towards future learning. So maybe instead of, say, I don't know, if he's got a skill of 500 and something, just as a random example, a random number pulled out of my head, maybe he starts off with a 5 times multiplier to his learning next time, so he, at least until he gets up to his old stat. So, whereas they still start weak, the growth would be much higher. And, well, that's my idea. I don't know what you think of it. I hope it's to your tastes, but honestly, I'm hoping they make it. And hey, if I get to the Top Geek final based off this, maybe I can just convince a few people to actually make it. So, well, thanks for your time, everyone, and be seen.